Mixed reports coming in about whether or not Manhattan's prosecutors are signaling former President Trump could soon be facing criminal charges related to hush money payments made to adult actress Stormy Daniels. That news first reported by the New York Times. I want to bring in NBC News Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Dateline and NBC News senior legal correspondent Laura Jarrett. Ken, I'm going to start with you. And no, we're telling our viewers here, we're being very transparent. There's a little bit of mixed reporting tonight. All of this information is just coming in, so I want you to sort of clarify where we are on our reporting. The New York Times has a headline out tonight signaling that prosecutors say criminal charges possibly are likely for former President Trump because they're asking him if he wants to testify in front of a grand jury, which usually signals that criminal charges could be coming. We have some different reporting. Get us up to speed right now.
Good evening, Tom. Well, actually, NBC News has confirmed that Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg has invited the former president to testify before the grand jury that's been investigating this hush money payment matter. And that is a sign, generally, in the New York system that charges are imminent. It's equivalent to getting a target letter in the federal system. It's what happens to defendants shortly before they're indicted. It's very unlikely that Donald Trump would be able to testify. He would be opening himself up to too much jeopardy. But New York generally grants a defendant one last chance to tell their story before they are charged. And let's remember what this case is. It's a case involving a $130,000 payment made to the porn actress known as Stormy Daniels back in 2016. And the charges here are based on the premise that that payment was not properly accounted for under New York state law within the Trump organization. And that would be a misdemeanor. But to elevate it to a felony, it would have to be in concert with another crime. And the potential crime there is an improper campaign contribution. This $130,000 could be seen as a campaign contribution to Donald Trump because he was running for president at the time, and he wanted to tamp down on this story that he was allegedly having an affair with this porn actress, which, by the way, he denies. And so that's the theory. It's also important to note here that the federal government, the Southern District of Manhattan, investigated this case thoroughly, and they charged former Trump lawyer Michael Cohen in a document that laid out some of the conduct of then President Trump, who was called in that document Individual 1. But they decided not to, well, they couldn't charge Trump while he was president under Justice Department doctrine. But even after he left office, that office took a look and decided not to charge former President Trump. They decided this case was not strong enough. So Alvin Bragg, the Manhattan DA, should he bring this case, is taking a big risk. It would also be a momentous decision to charge a former president. And it could be the first of actually several charges. There are two other pending investigations involving former President Trump.
All right, Ken, I also want to point out some new NBC News reporting we have here from Trump's own attorneys who are saying this. Two of Trump's defense attorneys tell NBC News that former President Donald Trump has been told through his attorneys that he can appear before the grand jury. But here's what they say is different. Contrary to the New York Times reporting, according to these sources, he was not told that criminal charges could be forthcoming. I want to turn now to Laura Jarrett, who's joining us now. Ken touched upon all the different sort of crimes that may or may not have been committed here. The law, it's very complicated. This is not going to be an easy case to prove. Just to walk people through this again, the two charges here involve former President Trump paying Michael Cohen, right, saying they were legal fees. Reimbursing him, saying they were legal fees, but they weren't legal fees. So that is considered fraud, a misdemeanor. They could elevate it to felony, but it's going to take some time. On top of that, they want to marry that to another law that was possibly broken, that by Michael Cohen paying Stormy Daniels that $130,000, it was a hush money payment. That's actually not illegal. You can do that. What's illegal is that President Trump was running at the time for office, so he violated a campaign law. So
you don't need me at all.
No,
I
do need you. But here's the thing. Can they marry those two laws together? Because that seems complicated.
It's super complicated. It's untested. It's a novel legal theory. And this is why so many people, I think, have looked at this case as sort of, if you're going to bring a case against the former president of the United States, is this the best vehicle to do that? Because of all the reasons you laid out. Normally, it would be a misdemeanor. Falsifying business records, misdemeanor. Doesn't mean it's not a serious criminal charge, but it's a misdemeanor. And kind of a question of, is it small potatoes? Is it worth going after the former president when he's been facing so much other scrutiny for his business records, something that may seem more elevated? But as you point out, you can elevate it to a felony. So we're talking about jail time here, at least I think 4 years in prison. But to do that, you'd have to tack on this other violation of an election law, and it seems like a roundabout way to do it. And so the question whether is that really the best use of the prosecutor's time and discretion here? Now, of course, the Trump camp denies all of this, and they say that this is just a political hit job on him. But it's worth noting that, you know, the district attorney here has faced a fair amount of scrutiny for not having pursued other cases against Trump, and in his discretion decided
over tax fraud.
Over tax fraud, and he decided he couldn't make out that case, and he didn't pursue it. And someone wrote a whole book about why he should have. But it appears as though this has reached an advanced stage, and so they can quibble. The president's lawyers, former president's lawyers, can quibble about whether or not this signals that a criminal charge is near. But it clearly signals that the prosecutors have reached an advanced stage. We know that they have brought a litany of other witnesses into the grand jury, and typically you wouldn't go after someone at a high level at this stage unless you were prepared to indict.
And Alvin Bragg, we should point out for our viewers, is somebody who runs for office. You have to be elected to become the district attorney of Manhattan. I do want to ask you, Trump's attorneys are pushing back on the New York Times reporting, saying, listen, they just invited him to testify before the grand jury. They're not signaling any criminal charges. But if they're asking you traditionally, historically, to testify in front of the grand jury, it's essentially your last chance to say, I'm innocent, I didn't commit these crimes, don't indict me, correct?
Yes, and New York law is a little bit funky here, and in other places it's not always the case that they do that, but New York law, they let you sort of have that one last shot at testifying. Now, I cannot imagine a circumstance in which we will see Donald Trump enter that courthouse to testify, because if he takes the stand, he doesn't get to claim immunity. He doesn't get to take the fifth, so to speak. He'd actually have to testify honestly and frankly about everything he knows about that, and they may not be something he wants to do and open himself up to criminal exposure.
So let me ask you, because you know the world of politics, you know the world of law, these are going to sort of intersect, because I wrote a note down here, 2024. I mean, we're getting closer and closer to the primary calendar. I think the debates start in August. What's going to happen here? I mean, will judges take this into consideration? Will the appellate courts take this into consideration?
They're not supposed to, but you know, it's just a question of reality that we're all living in. Again, we're in sort of untested waters. We've never seen the former president of the United States under criminal indictment. And we should be clear, it's not there yet. They haven't charged him with anything. He can deny this, as he has continued to do, and I'm sure will do, and say that he's innocent of any of these charges. But if they do charge him in the midst of a political season, it will obviously cause a fair amount of, you know, confusion and speculation about what it all means. And it's certainly something on the minds of federal prosecutors, as you have seen the Attorney General appoint a special prosecutor for this very reason, recognizing the extraordinary circumstances we find ourselves in to have the former president under such scrutiny.
And there's a whole conversation you can have about politics on whether this is going to hurt the president, former president, or help him, because it may empower him with some supporters. Ken, before we go, I do want to ask you for one more question. I know grand juries, they operate in secrecy. Do we have any kind of idea on a timeline on what's next? And I understand from some of the reporting that I'm reading, the most he could get possibly if he was convicted is 4 years. So we're not talking about a ton of prison time if we even get to that level.
I think that's correct. We can only intuit and read the tea leaves that the timeline is accelerated here, that apparently they're asking him to come in next week. And so, you know, if it goes as other cases have gone, an indictment could be imminent, like within weeks. But you're absolutely right. This is not a terribly strong case. It's not a very serious set of criminal charges, particularly compared to what Donald Trump may be facing down in Georgia with the case down there, and also with special counsel Jack Smith, who is investigating, obviously, what happened in January 6th, as well as Donald Trump's retention of classified documents.
But actually, I just thought of one more question for you, Laura. The genie's out of the bottle here. Alvin Bragg, at this point, it's going to be very hard for him to hit the brakes, right? I mean, it would seem somewhat embarrassing if they go through this, all the way through here, and they don't do anything, right? Yeah,
I mean, there's this famous saying is like, if you're going to take a shot at the king, you don't miss.
Right, from The Wire, yeah.
You don't go this far down the line in a historic prosecution if you're not prepared to indict. Now, of course, the district attorney's office this night is declining to comment.
Okay, Laura Jarrett for us, Ken Delaney on this breaking story that's just coming in. We appreciate both your reporting and your analysis.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.